Once you start living this way and embracing them and applying them to your work in whatever way you can, are so transformative that when we start doing this in a big way, then that's when the real change comes.
What if your period or your reproductive cycle wasn't something you had to ignore in order to succeed at your job, but was actually the secret to your next promotion or to become more successful than you could have imagined? Today's episode is all about how your hormones are not just for your fertility, they are your superpower in your career. And learning how to work with them instead of against them could be the key to unlocking next level performance without burning out. We are joined by Karla Vitrone, whose career spans high-powered roles in creative advertising to co-founding the hormone wellness app Moody to helping place top talent at companies like Airbnb, Warby Parker, and the New York Times through her work at Tangerine. Karla sits at a rare intersection. She understands leadership, corporate culture, and the internal shifts that women go through, especially when it comes to energy, confidence, burnout, and their health. In this episode, we dive into how hormonal misalignment might be showing up as imposter syndrome or exhaustion, why the corporate ladder was never actually built for our biology, and what it looks like to build a career in sync with your cycle. Seriously, understanding your hormones is going to unlock better problem-solving skills, more creativity, better leadership and brainstorming, and it's the secret to avoid burnout while working towards success. I am so passionate about this topic because as women, obviously we have proven that we can not only just survive, but thrive in a man's world, in male-dominated fields, in patriarchal culture, but how much happier, more successful, more effective would we be if we actually knew how to work with our bodies? And that's what this episode is going to teach you today. Whether you're in your 20s and just starting to build your career, or you're in your 40s facing what Karla calls the perimenopause glass ceiling, this conversation is about tapping into your body's intelligence and using it as your secret weapon for success. Welcome, Karla, to the Everygirl Podcast. What got you interested in this connection between hormonal health and professional success?
It's such a great place to start because it's very much like a culmination and like a real coming together of like all of my lives and different kind of versions of my career. So I grew up working in advertising, and then I had a hormonal health crash after my first child. He was born 9 years ago. I got diagnosed with Hashimoto about 6 months after he was born. And it was just, like a lot of us have experienced, like one of those moments in life where you are truly brought to your knees and finally kind of understand what people are talking about when they've had their own kind of health disruptions. It completely floored me. And I went on a whole journey that led me to Moody. But to answer the question, after coming out of Moody day to day in 2020, I started focusing on people and headhunting. I'm part of an amazing company called Tangerine, and I created another company that sits alongside that. And everything we do is about helping companies transform through the power of the right people. And then obviously in turn, you're working with talent to make sure that they are the best they can be in the right roles, performing, at their optimum level. We're predominantly female, we're female founded. And so we really are passionate about the future of women in the workforce. And what came to me through this work and also through, building Moody for 3 years and being completely hormone obsessed, it struck me that we are ignoring something that is so vital, honestly, to the future of humanity, the future of women being more powerful than we currently are in really meaningful ways, which does change the world. And so what I've been doing and then what we've been doing at Tangerine and Moody is we've really joined forces and we've created a platform that's very much focused on work and hormones. So working with your cycles, your shifts, and then of course, and we can get into this, like there are points in your life as a woman where they're more profound. But what I'm excited about in the conversation we're going to have today is like everything in health, prevention is everything, right? So like I feel so excited for the next generation of women coming up through the workforce to not have to suffer in silence and shame in the way that the generation did before us, and that we're kind of at the forefront of changing. My career is very much defined by starting a hormonal health company and helping people thrive in their careers.
Yeah, you've such a really fascinating crossover of both, of like so much personal and professional experience in women's health, hormonal health, but then also with just like career success, talent. It really is such an interesting background, and that you combine these two worlds so well and in such a necessary way, because it is really mind blowing when we think about how little women know to apply their hormones to their work life, and
Yeah.
how integral our hormones can play in our career success. It's not something that's really talked about. I mean, I love that women are more embracing, cycle syncing, and just the idea that you could be different every single day is amazing, that that's becoming a lot more mainstream than it was 5 years ago. But I feel like it still hasn't really been applied to career life in a really mainstream way. And so I'm really excited about what you are doing, because it's so important. And it's crazy to think that we are supposed to be super productive every single day doing the same things. And that's also not even to mention what issues like Hashimoto's or
Mhm.
PCOS or endometriosis, how that can affect you at work. But
Yeah.
then also, it's like we have this blueprint, how our hormones change, that makes us wired for different things in our career. So like it's such an important conversation. For anyone who may be like really new to this conversation, how exactly do our hormones affect the way that we show up at work? Can you walk us through what is happening in our bodies that can impact energy, confidence, clarity, like anything that we may need in our careers?
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing I loved about what you said, and this is like the reason that I'm so passionate about this subject, is as women coming up, into a world that's been very male dominated in whatever industry you're in, we hide behind the reality of our own biology. And then therefore we become our own worst enemy because we are shrouded in shame. And then that makes men not want to like approach it or go near it. And then the problem keeps getting personified. So in terms of, if you think about just your cycle, right? So, like, of course, there are all the things you mentioned, like if you have PCOS, if you have endometriosis, if you're pregnant, if you're postpartum, if you're perimenopausal, we can talk about all of that stuff separately. But when it comes to women who are experiencing a cycle, you are profoundly different 4 times a month. And when we were developing Moody and when I was going on my own health journey, I didn't know that. And this was in 2017, but I meet a lot of very, very smart, accomplished, successful women who still don't know that. So as much as like I think in our world and maybe for a lot of your audience, there is more of a baseline understanding. There's so much work to be done in the basics. And in terms of how it relates to work, the working world, so the working day, the week, the construct and the systems of work were created around the patriarchy, which again, like I'm not like bashing that. That was how work was formed, was around women being at home and men working. But it hasn't changed, which is wild. And so not only are we fighting upstream in, becoming more senior, becoming more influential, like entering into positions, industries that are heavily male dominated, we're also forcing ourselves to work and operate in a way that our bodies are not harmonized with. So, in terms of like how we move through our cycle, if you start with your bleed, when you have your period, we are very inward. You get very insular. You obviously are fatigued, you're bleeding. For a lot of women, you're losing a lot of blood. You're not feeling as outgoing and all the things that you feel at other points in your cycle. And the thing that I get really excited about, because I have experienced how life-changing it is when you understand and you do start living in harmony with it and apply how you work to it. That's not a negative thing if you know how to use it. So I do think for me, the first day of my bleed, I really like, as much as I can, I cancel big calls, big meetings. I try and do work that feels focused, like writing, like going a bit more inward. Like you can really use that feeling of introspection in a really powerful way. And I think this applies across a ton of different professions and industries. And then as you come out of that, and we have in the Moody app, we actually like relabel the phases just to make them kind of honestly like more positive and less scientific, right? So we call that, instead of luteal, we call it reflect. And then we have like the rise phase as you're coming into ovulation. And so what's really interesting, I think the way to think about hormones and work is like think about it as an operating system. So how can you create infrastructure and a system around how to optimize yourself? And of course, there's probably people listening that, well, my boss, I can't tell my boss, sorry, like I'm on my period. But I think as you prepare to become more senior in the working world, where you do have more autonomy, you can start practicing, or you can at least be aware. So you might be kinder on yourself if you don't show up as sharp and as confident as you would when you're ovulating. Just start building that baseline awareness, education, and understanding. Another couple of things to really point out is, so coming up to ovulation and during ovulation, that is when evolution programmed us to be our most attractive, our most outgoing, because it's when we were looking for a mate. And there's an amazing book actually called Hormonal, which really digs into the primitive nature of hormones, but how we can apply them in a modern way, which I think is really fascinating in this conversation. So for as much as you can plan, like maybe there's a conversation you want to have with your boss that you can control, that maybe you want to ask for a raise, you want to ask for a promotion, like put that meeting in their calendar around that time when you're going to be on, you're going to be focused, and you're going to feel your best. And so those 4 weeks you can really use it and optimize and plan and schedule and start kind of like feeling out those rhythms, because men have a daily cycle. So they have a testosterone peak in the morning and one in the afternoon. Men are able to basically operate the same throughout the month. And we've been holding ourselves to that same standard. And it is utterly life-changing when you start embracing and harmonizing and not freaking out. Like, oh my God, is something wrong with me? Like, I don't feel as confident. Everything's irritating me when I'm feeling PMS symptoms before my period. And just that catching yourself and knowing and then planning accordingly is like, I really feel is the unlock to what we're talking about today.
I love the way you explain it. Obviously, this idea that we should have the same daily schedule or the same weekly schedule is patriarchal. Like that is all based on, like you said, the male biological rhythm. And so we get into this place where, yeah, we feel like low energy, or we feel like, I like really don't want to do this meeting and socialize and go through all that. And we think something's wrong with us. Or we have days where we're like super not really introspective. We're like very like, oh, I have this idea, I can't be focused. We spend so much of our lives feeling like we're wrong instead of thinking the system is what's wrong, not us.
Yes,
And
yes,
so
amen.
changing, amen to that. But changing the system, or at least changing what we can control, and at least starting to realize this is actually like a superpower. Like I really don't like when people kind of think of it of like, oh, we're limited because of our biology, so we can't do this male pattern because it's a limit for us. I actually think the opposite. I think it's a superpower. We have proven that we can keep up with the 8 to 5 work day. Like we have proven it. Okay. Women are excelling, and there's all the statistics to prove it. But we have this superpower where our bodies thrive on different things at different times. And so not only is it like, we're not going to thrive as much, we're limited. It's more of like, what a freeing, amazing thing to be like, whoa, we have this superpower that is innate in our bodies where like, you mean to tell me that I could maybe get more of a raise if I talk to my boss in my ovulation, or I could have a better aha moment when I do that brainstorming when I'm on my period. Like we have a superpower. It's not something limiting.
Yeah. And I think it's the same with menopause, right? Like so much of the way that women are marketed to around anything hormonal is driven by fear because fear sells. So, oh God, I'm on my period, I'm pregnant, it's so hard. Oh my God, I'm postpartum, I'm menopausal. There's all these negative connotations. And that's the work we have to do, right? To change. And we can do that work by reclaiming the power. And that's honestly why we called Moody Moody. We're like, yes, we are moody. And like moods are a good thing. If you don't have moods, you're dead. Moods are signals and they're important signals. And the work is about us listening and also us proving to the world that they are superpowers, because I couldn't agree more. How lucky are we that we're not the same every day, that we have these different, and all of the phases, by the way, like once you start living this way and embracing them and applying them to your work in whatever way you can, are so transformative that when we start doing this in a big way, then that's when the real change comes, because the barrier at the moment is our own shame. And I work with a lot of very senior women who are in their 40s and their 50s who are afraid to own up and mention the menopause word. And so that's why I think it's really, these conversations are incredible, because we have to start talking about it in this positive way. And we can only do that when we experience how positive it can be. I couldn't agree more with the superpower part of it, because they truly are.
Most of our listeners are in their 20s and 30s. What should they start doing now to better support both their hormonal health and their career performance and be more successful long term?
So when you're in, especially in your 20s, right, it's like starting to pay attention to your cycle. So tracking is, whether you're using Moody or whatever you're using, tracking is essential, because that starts getting you into the pattern recognition and the behavior of learning. Like, I always feel X in, because, everyone experiences their cycle slightly differently. But just the basic understanding of like, okay, here's when my progesterone is rising and this is how it makes me feel. The few days that I ovulate, because some people actually experience a lot of anxiety around their ovulation. Not everyone has like a hugely positive experience. So first of all, it's like start understanding your cycle and how it impacts you. And if you start feeling like, say your anxiety is like through the roof when you're ovulating, then you should go and speak to an endocrinologist, speak to your OB, like start learning your own rhythms and things that maybe are like standing out and that are not exactly right. Starting to live in the other areas in your life around your cycle, I think are really important to then bring it into work. So working out is a huge one. Again, we shouldn't be doing the same exercise throughout our cycle. So yoga and Pilates in the run up to your bleed, during your bleed, and then kind of like really using the energy and strength we have pre, during, and post ovulation to like really focus on your cardio. And that's something, again, like I can guarantee completely changes your mind and your body, because it's a very easy way to just hack your own system and make sure that you're not flooding your body with cortisol. And so I really do think that the ultimate solution to all of this is education, 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 and awareness. And then like understanding that in relationship to your own personal cycle. And so what that's going to do is then as you go on your hormonal journey through life, and that's really what life is a hormonal journey. The way that we talk about hormones is something separate to ourselves. Like we feel tired because of hormones. We stay asleep because of hormones. We feel full. We feel hungry. Like we are governed entirely by hormones. And we are literally on this earth because of hormones. So, learning just to start integrating it. I would also say for younger women, especially women in their 20s, like start talking about it, because that's where this real change is going to come from. When I was growing up, and I'm in my early 40s, when I was coming up through advertising, I was definitely not talking to any men that I worked with about my period, my cycle. I didn't even understand it. I didn't have the lexicon, the language, the understanding of my own rhythms. I was like a kamikaze. I'm like, oh shit, now I have my period, and like I had no idea it was coming. And oh, that's why I was crying last week. But I never thought to like make a note. Like it really wasn't part of how we grew up. So I think starting to talk about it, starting to own it, and then as you get more and more into it, starting to apply just some like basic principles to work, starting to plan out your month and your week, right? Like, are there some things that I can shift around? So start kind of taking agency in areas that you can. And then if there are parts that you don't have agency in because it's a big meeting, it's a client thing, your boss needs you to be somewhere, then plan around it accordingly. Maybe you rehearse a conversation more than you normally would. You prepare to be more emotional, like you don't drink around your period because the way that you metabolize alcohol is entirely different, and then it's going to make you more anxious, more emotional. Like there's nutritional support, there's supplemental support. So just starting to like weave that in where you can, because then if you hit your 30s and you do want to have kids, you're going to go into like a huge seismic hormonal event around pregnancy, childbirth, postpartum. So the earlier you start, the more prepared you're going to be, and the more you're just going to thrive, and you're going to have like incredible experiences because you're actually in control of them and owning them, and they're not happening to you. And the last thing I would say as it pertains to work is I think the earlier you start practicing it, even though you might feel like, well, I've got 7 bosses and I'm the most junior person in this company. Maybe you start talking to your boss about it, who's a woman. You start becoming an advocate for it. And then as you become more senior and climb up the ranks, when you do have more agency and control, you are so prepared to start like really applying all this stuff that you've been rehearsing for a decade or however long.
How do we normalize this conversation more in the workplace? Because like working with all women, it is like the best thing in the world, because we do talk about, like I would joke with my old podcast assistant about like she would know my entire cycle because she would know to schedule what. So I think that it's such an important part of work that I certainly bring into my workplace. But obviously, when you're in a corporate setting, when you're working with men, when you have a male boss, it becomes a lot more uncomfortable. And in a dream world, no matter where you worked, you would be able to go in and say, oh, I'm ovulating today, so I'm going to take on this meeting, or like I'm on my period, so can we reschedule that meeting? Like that would be the dream. How do we start normalizing these conversations in settings where it doesn't feel super comfortable for women to be like, hey, I'm on my period?
Yeah. Yeah. I spend a lot of time thinking about this, and I really appreciate the question. I think it's a little bit twofold. I think we have to do our own inner work. So I think we have to start tracking. We have to get in control of it. We have to start showing up in a way that we feel confident enough, because we know that it's not something that's going to trip us up or hold us back. Like I was actually having an amazing conversation with somebody yesterday who brought up that, and this has been in the kind of toxic masculinity circles, it is often spoken about that the reason there's not a female president, there's never been a female president, and the reason that women should never have access to the nuclear codes is because we have periods. And like that is fundamentally like the highest issue we have. And so working backwards from that, if we can change our own lives and the way that we show up and start being in control, start having our own knowledge, start having our own awareness, living in harmony, and like preventing a lot of the things we can prevent, being caught off guard, a meeting not going our way because we are just so in a state of flux because we have no idea what's happening to us. So I think like it really does start with us. It starts with our own industries. It starts with our own communities. And then the confidence that builds by the very obvious change that starts to happen then enables you to much more confidently have these conversations with men. One of my partners is a man, and it's amazing because I genuinely don't feel any shame that, like, I'm on my period, so I'm going to be doing like this week, and I'm actually going to have like a quiet day. I'm going to, that thing we've been meaning to write, I'm going to take that on. And the other piece of it is I'm able to talk to him and all men about it very scientifically. And I do think, men have a hard time with feeling like women are irrational or erratic, right? And that is like a tale as old as time, and it's fucked up and it's all the things, but it's a reality. And so one of the things we did with Moody is created these like shareable cards. So you can share it with if you are in a heteronormative relationship or not, right? Like start the way you do with your friends, like start sharing. And what we have done is taken away like a lot of the kind of patronizing language that some of these apps have. And it's like, my progesterone is rising and I am going to feel like X. Chemically, this is where I am. And it's going to make me behave or feel these certain things. And this is how I'm counteracting them. So I do think like that scientific and like chemical part of it is also really important in these conversations. But I think ultimately it all comes from like the change from within, the knowledge, the confidence, being on top of it, and then also like more voices joining. If we can get all our female colleagues on board. I know a lot of men that have started learning about what we go through and are like, wow, I had no idea. The issue is when we're ashamed of it and we're hiding it, then that's when the sniggering happens, right? Like, oh, don't talk to her, she's on her period. That's the bullshit that we have to get rid of. And I think we also have to own that we've been part of it. Like I used to shove my tampon like so deep in my pocket when I was walking. Oh my God, I really hope no one knows I'm on my period and they think that maybe that's why I behaved a certain way in a meeting, or they're going to judge me, or yeah, I know that was like 5 million answers in one, but like, does that make any sense?
No, that is really a helpful answer because you're right. We're up against so much. Like, it's not only just that we as a culture haven't accepted that your cycle has benefit to understanding where you are for your success, but it's also like there's this idea that women's cycles are what make them bad at work, what would make them bad leaders, which is, by the way, how funny is it? I mean, not haha funny, but it's funny that all of the men that I know are 1,000 times more erratic, emotional, immature, dramatic than any woman I have ever met, current president of the United States included. Like, they are so much more dramatic, erratic, overly emotional, whereas women, all of the women I've ever known are so incredibly intuitive, emotionally aware, empathetic, like these very high IQ and EQ skills. And I think obviously a lot of that is conditioning. A lot of that is, I think, also our hormones, where we are in our cycle. We are so much more intuitive. So I think it's really important to be aware of we're up against a lot that's working against us, that's trying to tell us our periods make us bad leaders. And it's the opposite. It's not true. And I don't know, I know there's like a whole trend towards like acts of microfeminism, and something that I've started to do a lot, if this is helpful to anyone. If I get complimented on something, I like to say to anyone listening, like, use my cycle as the reason for it. Like, oh my God, that was such a great idea. Thank you. I'm on my period, so I'm like really intuitive right now. Or like, oh my God, you were so great in this interview. Thank you. I was ovulating, so I was like
Yeah.
really charming. It's such
Oh
an
my God.
easy
Yes.
act of microfeminism, I guess, to just whether
Yeah.
it is even to like your significant other, your friend, even if it's not comfortable to do that at work, but just to be like, thank you. It's because of my cycle, not against it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, yes, I think that is the manifestation of what I was saying about like, and you are a person, right? Who you have the knowledge, you have the power, you've learned it, you're living your life accordingly, and you are showing up in the world in the way that we need to show up en masse. That is exactly right. It's like communicating without any shame. If you're in a heteronormative relationship and you're talking to your boyfriend, your partner, your husband, and you're like, I'm a little bit more irritable this week, but the reason why is because, my period is my estrogen is plummeting, my progesterone is rising, and it's matter of fact, right? Or like, yeah, I felt great this week. Let's go get them. I'm going to do all these things. I'm so excited. And then I feel like that's how any movement and how any like huge behavioral change in society is born, is by us like really owning it. And I think you're exactly right. Like these kind of micro moments and opportunities. There's nothing I actually feel more overjoyed about. I had a text from a friend the other day. We're obsessed with Forward Space, this workout class in New York. And she'd gone and she's like, it was extra great today because I'm ovulating. And she's someone that doesn't like exist in the world. And I was just like, yes, it needs to become part of our vernacular and part of our like everyday conversation. That's how the change comes, right? Because you take away this like tension, this shame, and men are like, oh, if they're proud of it and owning it, what do I have to criticize anymore? Like, it's what you said at the beginning. It's a superpower, but we can only make it into a superpower when we really own it. And I did want to say as well, because I think maybe people are wondering this, I'm not sure, but it's something that I spend a lot of time thinking about, is like, why does this feel such like a new conversation when this information about our bodies has been around for decades and decades, like since the contraceptive pill was developed? Like, we just haven't had access to this information. It's actually been quite actively kept from us for a million reasons that I won't go into. But that's why, all these, and I'm really proud to be one of many voices in this space, and Moody being one of many companies in femtech, and then Tangerine really bringing this conversation into a professional context. Is we need to take the information, take it back and own it and use it for our own power, versus it being weaponized against us to scare us, to sell to us. And that's what I think is like incredible about this. Like, I really think it's a revolution. And your audience are really going to be the ones that make it completely fluid in how we live and work.
I mean, revolution is the best word for it, because it seems so simple, of like, we are just accepting our biology and working with it instead of against it. But like you said, it's been something that has been actively kept from us. I'm all about going down like a conspiracy theory rabbit hole. And I swear, whoever they are, knew that if women had this information, they would be the most successful of
Yes.
everyone else. So now it's our time to be like, okay, now we have the roadmap. People like you are giving women the roadmap. So it's our jobs to follow it, to be proud of it, to not be ashamed of our cycle, because now we have the blueprint for success right in front of us and how to use our bodies for our most successful life.
That's exactly right. My business partner, her husband actually said something to me this summer: the future's feminine. We talk about the future. No, it's like the future's feminine. And I think you're exactly right. Like, a lot of men are afraid of that. How do I do that? What does that mean? What does that mean to me? Does it mean? And it's like, it actually means amazing things for all of us, men and women. Like, a lot of the kind of very primal things that make us women, being nurturing, being maternal, whether you have kids or not, like women just hormonally are more programmed. Like, that makes us better leaders. It makes us more empathetic.
Yes.
Like, men can learn a lot. Also, there's so much data that companies that have women in the C-suite are far more profitable. So this isn't like a men versus women conversation. We all have to work together to make sure that femininity is pushed into the forefront. And to your point about men and who's starting all the wars in the world?
I mean,
right? This conversation about moody and emotional, it's like, yeah, no, I mean, I'm not going to repeat what you said. That's exactly right.
I also, with that point of like the moody, like, I love that you repurpose that for the name of the company, because I look at like PMS, the emotions before your period and during your period, whatever you want to call it. I look at it as that as being so wise. Like, that is when I'm the wisest all month long. I mean, in matriarchal societies in the past, they would have the women who were menstruating make the decisions for the tribe because they were the most wise and intuitive at that point. And it's true. If we feel emotion, like I have found in every instance of my life, if I feel really strongly and emotional about something when I'm on my period or right before my period, it's because that's a real feeling that otherwise I'm able to ignore. Like the amount of times that I have been with a guy that I would start getting extra annoyed with right before my period. And it turns out that was not the right guy for me. And I was just
Yeah.
able to ignore that feeling. But during that time, your body's like, no, no, your intuition is so freaking strong. You are the wisest you've ever been. You cannot ignore what otherwise you might be able to. So it's like more about wisdom more than it is this like, oh my God, you're so emotional over everything.
Yeah.
And I think that is like some of the language that bothers me most is that women are overly emotional and it's like just like their periods making them crazy instead of they are the ones who know the truth and the truth is like revealed to you during that time. It's like when you are so wise.
Yeah, it's so true. And that's why journaling is, and we have that a feature in Moody because of exactly what you just said, is like journal, like, and again, you don't have to journal every day in the way everyone tells us to, but like journaling during that period, it's so 100% spot on what you said. And it doesn't mean you have to act on it. I think that's the difference is right. When you have this power, you can be in that zone. You can be like, yeah, feeling a certain way in a relationship, feeling a certain way about work, a big decision, whatever it might be. And like really like listening to your rawest, wisest, truest self and then just sitting on it. And I think like where a lot of this kind of negativity has come from is like women often feel quite out of control because they're like, oh my God, I suddenly hate my boyfriend and I'm going to dump him. I'm going to do this. And then like the next week comes around, they're like, oh God, what was I thinking? Whereas like, again, it's about like these signals. It's about these pattern recognitions, learning how to deal with these different feelings we're having at different points, but being in control, which is what is so exciting about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you're one of the things that we try and do a lot is like owning a lot of the stigmas that, yeah, we're hormonal. So am I. We're all like you literally you were either dead or you're hormonal. Starting to like really own that previously negative language in a really positive way is also is a huge part of this shift and this change.
Yeah, changing the language and then knowing what those feelings are telling you. Yeah, I think journaling is helpful to be like, okay, I'm extra annoyed with my boyfriend. Is it because, he's not the right person for me? Or is it because I'm taking on too much at work and I don't feel as supported? Is it because I feel disconnected from him? What is the feelings? What are they trying to tell you?
Yeah.
I think that's where the superpower comes in of like, that's where it can tell you a lot, but doesn't mean you have to act on it. But I think that's where, yeah, women can stop feeling out of control when they're understanding and interpreting and listening instead of feeling like, I don't know why I feel this way.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Or, feeling like I've seen it happen with women in real time where I had like such a profound experience with a friend. She's like, I just can't stop crying this week. I think I might be depressed. I think I should go to the doctor. I just don't know what's wrong with me. Everything's upsetting me that wouldn't normally upset me. And I said, what day are you on? And this was in the early days of Moody. So obviously all my friends had downloaded it because they felt like they had to. And so she opened the app and I just saw everything in her get free and released of anxiety. And she went, oh my God, my period's due tomorrow. And watching her like sanity click back into place. And I was just like, that is the reason that we've killed ourselves for all these years building Moody. It's that moment. And then you obviously, as you go on your journey with it, getting to the place you clearly are at, right? It's like you start there and then you build and you build. And it's like any muscle that strengthens. So back to the point about advice, you don't have to suddenly go from zero to being like a cycle sinker. It's like anything in health. You build, you tweak, you learn, you become more well versed. And then slowly over time, it just becomes completely how you live. But you can make the first step by just honestly starting to track and then starting to learn, then starting to understand, then starting to apply lifestyle choices and decisions. And it's a journey. It might feel a bit overwhelming, a lot of the stuff we're talking about. So I just want to kind of wind it back to say, I went from knowing absolutely nothing and having something very dramatic happen to me that forced me into learning. You start in the simplest place and it grows from there.
Yeah, start just with like knowing this is where I'm at in my cycle and that's what I might expect or what this might mean, just starting with the knowledge. So we've talked a lot about the system that wasn't built for our biology, how to be successful, how to use our hormones. I'm curious, what would it look like to build a career that actually supports hormonal health instead of works against it? As we grow in our careers and people gain more and more freedom, what would it actually look like in practice to apply these principles and our knowledge about our hormones to our careers?
A lot of it is like thinking of it like an operating system, right? So look at your calendar. So you, by this point, you're tracking, and you know your cycle, and you can start looking like week by week. So your calendar might already like be full of certain things. So you start overlaying that with where you're at. And then you start kind of thinking about, okay, so my luteal phase, which is the week before your period, which is when you tend to go kind of like inward, you have loads of progesterone, which is nature's tranquilizer. It's like incredibly calming. It's a great time to be like uber creative, have new ideas. Everybody writes. Well, no, you don't have to be like an author or a writer to write. Like we all have things that we need to write, whether it's emails, whatever we need to get out into the world, new ideas to think of. Try and take away as many meetings as you can during the luteal phase to like really, really focus on that. Pretty much everyone knows when the first day of their period is going to be. As you get more senior, just take that day off. Like you can lay in bed and do emails, but like that's been life changing for me. And I have a very heavy bleed. So like me trying to power through that every month used to like near enough kill me and knock me out for the next week. And now I stay in bed and yes, I might still be working in air quotes, but I'm not doing Zooms. I don't, I keep my sweatpants on. I don't work out. I have a day where I really honor myself. And I find that propels me into the rest of my cycle in this amazing way. And then again, this is all said with like, there's a shit ton of caveats, right? But then when you come out of your period about day, as you're getting into kind of like your fourth or fifth day, leading up to ovulation, and you have an opportunity to somewhat control when a pitch is, when a meeting is, when an important conversation is. Maybe you take your team out for a dinner or an offsite, trying to plan as much as you can the very like outward things where you need to be a really strong communicator, you need to be super articulate, you need to be sharp, you need to show up. And also because you're going to feel like being sociable. I'm a big believer of like really leaning into whatever season you're in. And that, I think that goes for like the whole of life, but especially your cycle. So start arranging stuff that's as much as in your control as possible around that. There's a ton of nuance, but I think also like overlaying, like when you're tracking, if there's been incidents at work, like start thinking about like where you were at in your cycle, what happened at work that month, what you can change the next month. But it really is as basic as like creating a system and operationalizing your month. And a lot of that comes in like planning and rehearsing and sitting down and overlaying your period calendar with your work calendar. And that is what I think is going to like truly change everything. And then for your audience, it's like they're going to be so in a rhythm with this. That the biggest thing that I see, and a huge part of the conversation we're having, is that there's so many women who are hitting perimenopause and menopause and they have no idea what's happening to them. And it's when they're becoming the most senior. And there's like a whole other conversation there around people leaving the workforce, brain fog, crazy symptoms that don't have to be crazy if you've been living this life. And that's what I get really excited about in this particular conversation for people who are starting early and starting to live and work accordingly, is they're not going to get hit by a truck because they're going to know their baseline. They're going to be having their hormones checked regularly. They're going to be able to somewhat hack their systems. Like, I've started taking hormones like way earlier than I need to, because I don't want to wait till I'm completely depleted to start topping them up. So I think like that, honestly, like calendar management sounds so basic, but I think it's everything and it's a huge deal.
The perimenopause and menopause conversation. I mean, we should do a part 2 because
Yes.
that makes so much sense that it's like when women are hitting that, and again, after having careers where they have ignored and pushed away their biology for their entire careers, they get to this point where their body's changing, they feel these symptoms, and they're also typically in leadership positions. And so I can't even imagine how many women are like suffering and going through that. So that would be a really interesting part 2.
Yes, let's do it.
How does this look in practice in a company? If you're a boss, if you have your own company, like what do you guys do in the companies that you have to allow your employees to live with their cycles?
So for me, and I'm very much involved in Moody, but my day to day is very, very rooted in Tangerine, and we're 17, 14 women. We all, and this is like something, that I talk about every single day, right? So I hope that I've made it feel very normal and taken away shame, as we all talk very openly about where we're at. And if there's someone on my team and I know the first, I'm like, I'll take those meetings that day. I know the first day of your period is like really tough. And it works both ways. We all talk about like where we're at, and we try and like share the load and actually practice what we preach. What I try and do to, and hopefully this bleeds down, and I think that it does, is I just completely live my life around my cycle. And I will openly say to people on my team, I've got my period today. So I won't be on camera. I won't be on these calls. And say we have like a big new business meeting come in and we've got some options about when to do it. I'll be like, oh, I'm ovulating those few days. Can we do it within these 3 days? And I think over the years and over time, it becomes really natural and part of how your company operates. I would say, and I'm working with a lot of like big female leaders in big corporations at the moment, very male dominated corporations where these conversations feel a little bit trickier. And we're going in, we're doing events, we're empowering this conversation. And I think that the more women who get into power, who are really passionate about this conversation, and most women who have been very humbled by perimenopause, because it humbles everyone. And what I'm finding exciting is they're starting to really like lead this conversation with the tools and education we are bringing to them. And then they're talking to their male counterparts. They're making it part of like performance reviews with women on their team that they can tell are like, they have brain fog, they're having issue with word recall, all these things that are all hormonal symptoms, like trying to make it not like a weird thing to say to someone like, hey, have you had your testosterone levels checked? I have women all the time call me and say, God, I just don't know what's going on at the moment. Like I have really bad brain fog. And I'm like, how old are you again? And they're like, 47. I'm like, have you
Makes sense. Yeah.
had hormones checked? And I think what's been amazing is the response like, oh, actually, I haven't. And watching like this change happen within my universe and then like really wanting to spread it far and wide and have this bleed out, that should be a question that we're asking in performance reviews and in a work context. And, that change is going to happen. And to your point, become more part of how we do work and operate is when we start living accordingly, individually, and then making it more of a collective thing and start looking out for the other women and our team. And also like calling men out, like when we hear some of the, and it does happen less and less, thank God, but like if there is, oh, she's probably on her period, or if there's a dismissive comment made, we have to educate and hold people accountable to being dismissive about something that shouldn't be dismissed.
Yeah, because hormonal issues are work issues. When women thrive in their hormones, the company can thrive. Women can be better, show up better, have better ideas. So it just makes sense that it's a part of the work conversation. It's a part of check-ins. Like to normalize it makes a lot of sense in helping these amazing female leaders implement that into their companies. I know you've worked with so many of like the top companies. I'm curious if like are any companies supporting women's health in ways that help their employees stay and thrive?
I think the desire is there. And what I've been really encouraged by is, so Tangerine and Moody have launched something called Moody at Work. And it's basically a product where all women get a subscription to Moody, but access to videos. We go in and do events. And we kicked everything off with a big event at the end of May, which was kind of like a big kickoff of this conversation as it pertains to career longevity and success and optimization. And the aftermath of that and the kind of response has been so overwhelming in like a truly positive way. Like really, really, really big Fortune 500 companies are like, this is insane that we're not doing it. When you learn about why this is so important, it's almost like embarrassing for companies. They're like, because I think you said something that is the crux of it. We are all obsessed that's why AI is such an important conversation. We're all obsessed with optimization, but we're not optimizing women. And women are the most powerful asset in any company. And of course, I mean that in collaboration with men. But there is so much data around how much more successful companies are when they have female leaders. So optimizing ourselves and helping other women optimize is an absolute no-brainer, even if you're just looking at it from a crude economic standpoint, right? So I do feel encouraged by the response, by how many companies were going into want us to work with them, want us to educate them, want women to have access to Moody, to have access to creating an operating system around how to work in harmony. And I think it's going to be really exciting to talk in like a year's time and see like, okay, what data do we have to actually measure this change? So I think it's a really exciting time in this journey we're embarking on.
It's really exciting. And I'm so happy to hear that companies are so receptive to it because it to me feels like duh. But you can understand why, like we said before, it's revolutionary. It is breaking a system that's been in place for literally ever since work culture was invented. So I'm happy to hear that people are receptive. And I agree, the more data there is, the more we can measure it, the more work you're doing to implement this into companies, the more normalized it will be. And like that's when we know, okay, we've done it. We've changed the system, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
Can you leave our audience with some go-to supplements, tracking tools, routines, like what you swear by to help you stay in sync, avoid burnout, and just be more successful using your hormones?
Yeah. So tracking is key. There's loads of great apps. Obviously, I'm going to recommend Moody. It's Moody Month on the App Store. But really, just tracking is key. The way that you exercise is really key. I would say if you're going to do any supplements, like magnesium is really essential for women. It really like calms anxiety. It's for all phases of your cycle. Taking L-threonate at night, citrate for bloating is like game changing for women. Taking iron when I take it the whole month, but at least when you're bleeding, taking it in combination with vitamin C because that helps the iron absorb. It is like truly game changing. There's obviously like a ton of other stuff, and I'm like very into supplementation. But I would say, like, if you're going to just start there, and then I think really getting into harmony with yourself, starting to get into the flow, the pattern, also like acceptance, right? It is really like a journey of acceptance. I am different. This is how I'm different 4 times a month. It's not a bad thing. I'm going to learn about myself. I'm going to listen to myself. It really is like an act of like self-care, self-kindness, self-love. Like, so I would say, like, without getting into like the millions of things you can do, just like really starting with those things and building from there is the best place to start.
Those are amazing tips. Where can everybody find you? Moody, Tangerine, give us all the deets.
On Instagram, we're tangerine_revelry. I'm Karla New York with a K. I like got excited when I moved to New York 16 years ago, and I have never changed it. Moody is Moody Month on the App Store and on Instagram. And yeah, like watch this space. We've got lots of exciting stuff coming, and I'm really excited about the way that the next generation of women are going to change the future of how we show up in life and work.
Absolutely. Seriously, it like makes me so excited. So thank you so much, seriously, for joining me, Karla. I could not be more obsessed with your work, your mission. Like you are really changing the world for women and for everyone else, by the way, too, because as we've talked about. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. This was so fun. Thank you so much. It was so great to meet you.
I hope you enjoyed the episode. I know I sure did. Please do not forget to rate, review, and subscribe. It really makes a huge difference for our show so we can keep growing and bringing the content that you love. If you want more info, you can find us at the Everygirl Podcast on Instagram or theeverygirlpodcast.com. Talk to you next week.